Most house flippers have no clue what they're doing, and they end up buying the wrong houses, and they're basically screwed from the start. Today, we're going to go through the 4 strategies that actually work. We're also going to cover the 2 traps that catch most people, especially ones that are just starting out. And I would know because they both caught me early on. And the only way I was able to claw my way out of that hole is by living on job sites, selling my truck, and a whole lot of financial pain. Now I want you guys to be able to skip all that. So let's get started with first principles. As a flipper, you're gonna buy houses in neighborhoods that have a sales history. You're never guessing. You're always basing your decisions upon historical data. Now, this is what a neighborhood would look like. You have all of these different sales at different prices. Now, depending on where you're at, those numbers are gonna be different, but this applies everywhere. So this might be $100,000 to $110,000, $110,000 to $120,000, $130,000 to $140,000, so on and so forth. This is $300,000 right here. The ideal neighborhood will manifest itself like this, where you can clearly see that there's 3 different clusters of sales. Right here, and right here. Now, let's project that on to the livability index. These 3 clusters are bombed out right here, barely bankable right here, and the range of comps. Now, to make this easier to understand, let's compare it to something that you know, like vehicles. A bombed out vehicle is one that has rust on the outside, the engine's probably not working. You're gonna go get a great deal on that car. Both you, the buyer, and the seller knows that it's a piece of junk and it's gonna take a lot of work to get it into usable condition. And that's the same for a bombed out house. The buyer, you, and the seller knows that this is gonna take a lot of work. Most, if not all, of the major components are in bad shape, like mechanical, electrical, plumbing. There's probably some major demo that needs to take place, like all the drywall or the floors or the siding. Maybe you have to replace the roof. It's leaking, it's actively leaking. The siding, same thing, it's rotten or it's actively leaking. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing is not functioning correctly. There's some sort of water remediation or mold remediation or asbestos remediation that needs to happen. Maybe there's major structural damage to the house. Everybody knows that it's going to take a lot of work to move it from here to somewhere where it's a usable house. Now, the problem with a bombed out house is that a bank is not going to give you money to buy that house, which brings us to barely bankable properties. This is like the car that your grandparents or your parents handed down to you. Probably still got a cassette tape player, but it does run fine. It's just really outdated, kind of ugly. But you can do things to bring that back into the modern age. But there's one important thing about a barely bankable house. It is just beyond the line of livable. That means that somebody can safely live in that house. Past the line of livable means that a bank will give you money to buy that house with a normal mortgage. Now, this is a really important concept because bankable means that it's also monetizable for you to an end user, somebody who's gonna live in the house. Anytime you try to sell a house before you've reached the line of livable, you're gonna take a serious haircut on it. You're gonna be forced to sell it to somebody like me, a flipper who wants a deal on the front end because you know you have to do all this work to it. For the most part, you always wanna get a house past the line of livable. There are some strategies that work prior to that line that we're gonna talk about later, but for the most part, safest bet, get it past the line of livable. And then you have your range of comps. This is what people are talking about when they're talking about their after repair value. Or if your real estate agent comes to you with comps that says it's gonna sell for this amount, that's what they're talking about. These are the nicer houses. These are the flipped houses, the renovated houses in a neighborhood. This is the car that all your friends that actually have good jobs are driving. In most strategies, this is where people are trying to get their house. Now, before we get to the first mistake, I just want you to know that banks will give you money for a house that is past the line of livable because they know that the livability index is also the risk index. Raw land is the riskiest thing that you can buy because it is as far away as it can be from the line of livable, from the line of being able to monetize a property through rent or selling to an end user. Now, let's get to mistake number one, the mirage. When I finally had some success as a house flipper, I put some cash in the bank and I decided that I was gonna go out and buy my dream truck. I always wanted a Ford F-250. I'd always driven F-150s before, wanted to upsize. But being the cheap ass that I am, I decided that I was gonna find something out there that needed a little bit of work. Maybe the stereo didn't work right, or it needed a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I would work on it on the weekends. So I did a nationwide search, and I finally found this truck in Ohio for $18,000. And I rode all the way up there with my wife to get the truck. I make a deal with them actually for $17,000 because when I went there, the radio wasn't working, AC wasn't working so great, but that wasn't gonna stop me from getting my truck. So I make the deal, I'm pumped about it, and I'm seriously like 10 miles down the road when it starts to get a little bit bumpy. And then all of a sudden the dashboard lights up and it sounds like a Dave & Buster's. I got the check engine light, I got the traction control, I got the oil light, I have every light on in that thing. The blinker's not working right. Something is wrong with the truck. And that's when I realized that I got a lemon and there wasn't a dang thing I could do about it. In fact, I had to have my wife take me all the way back to Tennessee, and later I had to take a bus back up to fix the truck just so I could limp it home. But here's the thing. You see, I thought I was buying a vehicle that it just needed a little bit of work to get to a usable condition. And then I would have gotten a great deal on the truck that I always wanted. But the reality is that to make that truck worthwhile, I had to tear the thing completely apart before I can move it into a usable condition. But the thing is that this happens to flippers all of the time. Here's the way it breaks down. This is the formula that you need to understand before anything else. You have the sales price of that property, what it's gonna sell for when it's all said and done. And that is subtracted by the acquisition price, what you bought the property for, plus the renovation costs, plus the other costs like insurance, interest, realtor fees, title fees, etc., etc. All of that equals your profit. Now let's use a real example here. Let's say that you know this house is going to sell for $300,000. You end up purchasing that property for around $210,000. Plus you have $25,000 in renovations, plus you have $15,000 in other costs. So you got your $300,000 minus 250 equals a $50,000 profit. That's fantastic, right? But here's how the mirage gets you, is that you get in there and you find out that there is a little bit of mechanical, electrical, plumbing work to do. And maybe you find a structural issue. But what happens with the mirage is you end up having to take down some drywall, you have to pull up your floors. You end up doing a whole bunch of demo, which doesn't push the property forward on the livability index at all. In fact, you end up taking it back. But taking it back isn't free. You have to pay for all the demo expenses. So now this $25,000 budget, well, now you got to add maybe $10,000 for all that work. But now that you've taken it this way on the livability index, that means it's going to cost you even more to bring it back just to the point where you started. Maybe another, let's say, $25,000 there. Now we've added another whole $35,000. Now your profit goes from 50K to 15K. Now things are getting a little bit tight. And usually it doesn't work out like that, where there's still a profit left after you get caught by the mirage. So you got to be careful here that when you buy a property, you either are pushing it forward on the livability index from the start, or you are pricing it at the lowest point that you're ever going to have it on the livability index. If this property right here was going to sell for $210,000, if you knew that you were going to make it worth $180,000, well, you need to buy it for $180,000, not the $210,000. This is a very important concept for you to understand. Now, mistake number two. This is the one that I call the HGTV dilemma. And here's the way that I see this. It's like if you're super hungover and you go to a truck stop diner and you're wanting like some really greasy food to really soak up the hangover that you have. So you go to the cheapest place that you can go to, where you basically pay dollars per calorie, that type of place. But the waitress comes out with the menu, but it's got nothing but high dollar, petite gourmet meals on it. Well, you got a $20 bill in your pocket and you weren't planning on ponying up for that $50 souffle. But let's pretend that everybody that went to that diner has the same issue. They expected the truck stop diner, but the chef is trying to sell gourmet meals at too high of a price point. Well, that chef only really has one option at that point. Even though he may have spent money on all the best material, the best organic ingredients that cost him most of the $50 that he was trying to charge for that souffle. But the thing is, nobody in that diner has the $50 to buy that thing. So his only option is to discount it to the $20 because that's what they came to spend. And that's what happens to flippers who are caught by the HGTV dilemma. Because on HGTV, what they do is they buy houses right around here. Usually they're already past the line of livable. And then they push them way, 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 way beyond the range of comps. But you see, they can get away with it because they have a TV show and everybody buys their house because it's an HGTV house. And heck, they might not make any money off flipping those houses. They make money off the sponsorships, the ads that they sell. But you see, since so many people learn how to flip from watching those shows, it's kind of ingrained in your memory. Definitely happened to me. So what they do is everything on that house. They try to turn the Ford Taurus into a Maserati, but nobody can afford the Maserati in that neighborhood. They go to a different neighborhood to find those types of houses. So what you end up doing is spending way too much money on a renovation that you're never able to recoup. Because remember, when we go all the way back to the beginning, we talked about what the range of comps is. We talked about how flippers take historical data and that's how they base their decisions. In the range of comps, houses have sold for those prices. And you can look at pictures of that house and you can see what finishes they have and you can match those finishes. But here, beyond the range of comps, is pure speculation. You are trying to push the market past what it's proven that it sells for. And guys, that's not a strategy. That's just hoping. So let's talk about 4 strategies that actually work. First off, you have the classic. Buy low, sell less low. And this works anywhere on the index. If you want to buy a bombed out house, if you buy it right here and sell it right here, you've made money. There are people who might pay more for that house. That works anywhere. Buy here, sell less low. It's been working since the beginning of time. What that requires is for you to have really good skills in sniffing out and closing great deals on the front end. And then you have to go find the people that will buy them. This is basically what wholesalers do. Next, you have flip to the flipper. Somewhat of an advanced strategy. Works really well if you have construction skills. But what you do is you buy a bombed out house that has a lot of maybe mechanical, electrical, plumbing, maybe roofing that needs to happen. But you know how to get those things done at a reasonable price. So you go fix that really scary stuff and then you sell it to a flipper who doesn't really have the experience to be able to deal with that kind of stuff. Now we have the classic, the lipstick on a pig. Basically, you buy a barely bankable house and you modernize it. It's like a $20,000 to $30,000 renovation usually. You're not going to get into heavy mechanical, electrical, plumbing. You're not buying houses with structural damage. You try to avoid any roofs or sidings. You're just looking at floors, cabinets, paint, trim, hardware, stuff that usually you can DIY if you're new to the game. Now, this is a great strategy for people starting out because you're buying a barely bankable house. That means that you could get a personal bank loan, a mortgage on the house and live in the house. This is what a lot of people do when they're starting out flipping houses. It's what I did when I started out. I bought a house that I was going to live in and I did all the basic stuff because I didn't know construction at the time. And finally, you have the real deal. And the real deal is where you buy a bombed out house and you take it all the way to the range of comps. not beyond the range of comps, to the range of comps, and you sell it. This is certainly where you put the biggest chunks of money in your pocket. Not saying it's the best strategy, biggest chunk of money. Usually takes you longer to do it. One more thing to understand is this is not necessarily linear as you move across the livability index. Linear means that for every amount of work you do, the house becomes more valuable. That's linear. That's not really what happens here. What happens is it's more like a step function. You're here, you're here, you're here, you're here, and then you cross the line of livable, and now you're here. So the way it plays in my head is that anytime I have a house that's not livable, I'm working my butt off to get it to livable, because livable means monetizable. Livable means that if something bad happens in the market, I can make money off of that and protect myself. This is why I don't do a lot of new building, because that's as far away for as long as possible from the line of livable. Now I know that flipping houses seems overwhelming to those who haven't started yet, but once you understand the rules to the game, you really have a lot of control. As long as you're buying the right houses on the front end, you have control. You have the ability, even in some of the worst case scenarios, to make it out all right. And I know it can be scary, but gosh, there is nothing more scary than working 40 hours a week for the best years of your life doing something that you don't like. And I've certainly searched for other ways, but flipping houses and investing in real estate has been the most tried and true method for me to gain financial freedom, to gain business control, to gain control of my life, and to actually enjoy the time that I spend working. And to not only be able to grow something for myself and for my family, but to also be able to spend time with my family. And I want the same thing for you guys. So I hope you take this serious, and I hope you go check out some of these other videos so you can really start to add some knowledge, because knowledge leads to experience, and experience plus knowledge equals skills. And once you have skills, you really can take this to the next level.